Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about the books that I read recently in the month of May. As always, this is not an exhaustive list. If a book that I've read has its own dedicated video, it will not appear in this video. There are 4 books that I read in the month of May that I haven't talked to you guys about yet. Let's jump into it, shall we? The first of those is The Last Letter. This is by Rebecca Yarros. This is a contemporary romance novel. The book follows a man named Beckett who is serving in the military and a woman named Ella. Now, Beckett is enlisted with Ella's brother. When the brother, Ryan, is killed in action, Beckett finds out that Ryan's last letter, the letter that you usually write to be handed off to the recipient in the event of your death, is written to Beckett. And Ryan asks Beckett to please return to his hometown and take care of his sister, who is the single mother of twins and is going through a lot of trying, difficult times and has experienced a lot of tragedy in her life, and the death of her brother will be just one more tragedy that she'll have to endure. And so Beckett is entrusted to see Ella through all of that. Now, Beckett and Ella are not complete strangers. They had been exchanging letters for, I don't know, a year or so, up until Ryan's death. The only thing is, when Beckett goes to Ella, he does not reveal that he is Chaos, the person that she has been writing. He introduces himself as Beckett, and when writing to her as Chaos, he never revealed to her his true identity. I like a trope like this. I like two people who are sort of forced together under a certain set of circumstances. I like the chivalry and duty and honor sort of themes or characteristics about a romance novel, absolutely. However, oh, The Last Letter. Okay, so this book is really good. This book is well loved by some very serious romance readers on BookTube. They love this book. I love this book too. I just don't love this book as a romance novel. I don't think that it's a romance novel. I think that there's a lot going on in this book, including, but not limited to, some horrible tragedy. There is emotionally gut-wrenching tragedy throughout this book. The things that these two main characters are subjected to, it's so unfair and so tragic, and it's terrible. The problem is that the book ends up being mostly about that tragedy. The book ends up being about circumstances, not necessarily about the relationship. Yes, there's a relationship between two people in this book. However, I'm never quite comfortable with the level of chemistry between them. I'm not sure that they're pulled towards each other enough. I feel at times I felt like the relationship was forced. I feel like these two people are going through things that are making them grow, but they're doing so kind of on their own trajectories, which to me is not the quality traits of a romance novel. A romance novel sort of sees two people growing together and it's about two people who can't deny that they belong together, navigating that. And unfortunately, these two characters navigate a whole bunch of stuff with the side plot of trying out a relationship. It's just an adult contemporary novel. It's not a thriller. It's not a mystery. To me, it's not a romance. It's an adult contemporary, and I'm uncomfortable with that. I'm uncomfortable with that label. I think that you should find this book on your fiction shelf in your bookstore, but I don't think it needs to be any more specific than that, because it just struggles as a romance. Again, I have to reiterate that it is a good book. It will affect you. You will be emotionally involved with this book, but not necessarily because of the relationship between its main characters. Next, I read The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. So if you are a horror fan or a thriller fan, chances are, if you haven't read this book, then you've at least heard of it. I'm pretty sure that amongst my booktube horror reading peers, I'm probably not the first person to read this book, for sure. Maybe more so like the last person to read this book. But it is a book from 1989, I believe. And it is an iconic horror novel. At least that's how it'll go down in history. Okay, I'll get into that. But anyways, written in 1989, Jack Ketchum actually molded this book based on a true story from the 1950s, 1960s. I'm sorry, it's been a while since I read this book, like a whole month, so you're gonna have to bear with me. But it's about a girl and her sister who are sent to live with their aunt because their parents have died in a car accident. And the aunt has 3 sons, and she's not particularly nice to her nieces. Meanwhile, the story is told through the eyes of the boy living next door. He is a typical pre-adolescent. His parents are still married, though it's questionable whether or not it's happily married. And he's just kind of your average Joe, and he finds himself in the midst of this horrific situation going on next door. He has a crush on the oldest sister, and it is the oldest sister who is subjected to extreme abuse at the hands of her aunt and her cousins. So, I've heard this book described by people as the most disturbing book that they've ever read, and here's where we learn how twisted I am. This is by no means the most disturbing book that I've ever read. This book is unsettling to me at best. And even the story itself, which again is based on a true life event, isn't as graphic or unsettling as the true life event. If you go to Wikipedia, and I will link the Wikipedia article about the actual true life event in the description box. But if you go and you read that article, like, I mean, it's way more disturbing than the book ever gets. So I think this is a good case of overhypedness working against the material. It is so legendary. It is so talked about. It is, again, just people are dedicated to the fact that this book is disturbing. And it's by no means a party, but really the majority of this book is rather bland, and the intense scenes or the disturbing scenes, I mean, they happen much later in the book. And so you've got this build up, stand by me-ish kind of book for the most part, and then some truly upsetting things that happen at the end. I mean, I'm walking away from this book giving it 3 stars, and it's one of those books that, again, I'm not going to be the person to change everybody's mind. I'm not going to be the person to say that this book isn't relevant. I think that it is, and I think that it has been elevated to such a status that anybody who's interested in darker fiction needs to read The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. But, I mean, if you've read Brother by Anya Alborn, or if you've read Kin by Keelan Patrick Burke, I mean, those books are cranked up quite a bit from where something like The Girl Next Door is. And The Girl Next Door, there were parts of it that reminded me of Brother very much. Brother being written much later than The Girl Next Door, and I don't know if maybe it could draw some of its inspiration from The Girl Next Door, but, just this crazy woman, this crazy villainous woman is at the center of the story and responsible for all of this family upheaval and for turning her children, turning her impressionable youth into vicious like non-civilized creatures, you know. Brother still ends up being way more disturbing and way more graphic and way more of something that I would consider horror than The Girl Next Door. Can you tell that this month I had a problem with the way things are categorized? Because I did. But all in all, again, like the other thing is, you know, if I had read The Girl Next Door prior to reading those other books that I mentioned, I might be a little bit more like, whoa, you know, that it might have caught me a little bit more off guard. Or if I had read this book in 1989, granted, not when I was 9, but if I was reading this book back then, I'm trying to put it in. I mean, I can't say that it was like original material. You know, there were still slasher films and all of that stuff in the 70s, 80s. So it's not like even back in the 80s when this was written, people hadn't been exposed to some gruesome stuff. I'm too desensitized, I suppose. I'm very desensitized, and I'm not somebody that gets easily affected or worked up by things. I'm an emotional person, but I don't let myself get too worked up about things. I look at things and think, oh well, you know. And so I think that maybe has something to do with why this book didn't give me nightmares, or why this book didn't make me nauseous. Like, I don't know. The true story is way more disturbing, I think, because it's true, and that just automatically makes it way more disturbing. Next, I want to talk to you about The Night Before. This book is by Wendy Walker. This was the other arc that I needed to read for the month of May, which I did. Just, it might have been published first before I read it. I'm a horrible person. But I really liked this book. It was the first book by Wendy Walker that I'd ever read, even though I purchased Wendy Walker books before. I think I have one from Book of the Month and one that I purchased on my own. So I'm a little bit more excited to read those now. Emma in the Night is the book written by Wendy Walker that was offered by Book of the Month. So you've probably heard of her if you're a thriller reader. The Night Before is about two sisters, Laura and Rosie. Laura is living with Rosie, who is married with a son. The book is told in dual timelines. It's told the morning that Rosie wakes up to find that Laura did not return home the night before from her first date with someone she met online. And it's also told from Laura's perspective in the day leading up to the date and the date itself. So interesting take on the dual timelines because they're so close together. They're timelines that take place 24 hours apart, which I don't typically like a dual timeline, but I did enjoy this book quite a bit. When Rosie wakes up to find that her sister did not return, she's immediately concerned and frantic. Her sister has a real checkered past when it comes to her love life and kind of picking men who can't possibly love her and then being heartbroken when they don't. And so everyone walks on eggshells around Laura when she starts dating, I think. And so when she doesn't return from this date, her sister gets very concerned. However, her sister is not concerned for Laura. Her sister is concerned for whomever Laura met. Because back when they were younger, when they were teenagers, Laura was actually implicated in the death of the boy that she was dating in high school. That is what grabbed me right away. The fact that it's not a typical or traditional story. It didn't go where I was expecting it to go. Right away, a curveball was thrown at me because the sister isn't worried about her sister. The sister's worried that her sister might have killed the dude she was meeting. Like, that's a pretty that just grabs you by the collar and it's just like, okay, you're gonna have to pay attention to this book. There were two twists that that definitely didn't see coming. And when I say twist, what I mean is there was one major twist of the book, And then, of course, there's the major reveal. To me, in a mystery thriller book, the reveal is what we've known we needed to figure out the whole time. A twist is something that comes out of nowhere that adds to the story, but isn't something we expected to even need to know. So there's a major twist in this book that I did not see coming, and holy crap, it smacked me upside the head. And then the reveal was also something I did not expect either. So I didn't figure this book out. Granted, I did read it in a bit of a rush because I was under an obligation that I was failing on, but it's a book that says, hi, I'm your expected thriller, and then it doesn't turn out to be your expected thriller at all, which I think is what's making it's what's making me feel so good about it, is that I didn't have super high expectations for this book. Instead, it ended up saying, you know, sit down, shut up, you don't know anything about me, let me tell you my story. And I'm like, okay, gotcha. Lastly, I want to talk to you about a really different book that I read. Actually, I listened to this one. It is The Long Way Down, and it is by Jason Reynolds. This book was in an anticipated releases video that I did for BookTube back. You know, there was before my twins and after my twins. So this was before my twins. I think it was in 2017. Maybe it was... I think I was anticipating 2018 releases in that video. The Long Way Down is about a 15-year-old boy whose brother has just been murdered. He gets up deciding to exact revenge on his brother's killer and steps out of his apartment and into the elevator with a gun in hand, ready to do so. The book takes place over 1 minute. And in that 1 minute, as the elevator makes its way down to the lobby, and each time it stops, someone that knows or is at least somehow related to our main character gets on the elevator. The problem is that everyone who gets on the elevator is already dead. They've died in a violent way, and they're sort of... I don't know if they're there to dissuade him from his intent or if they're just there to kind of make sure that he's sure that this is what he wants to do. And so it's... The author himself describes this book as a combination of like Boys in the Hood and A Christmas Carol. The unique thing about the book, if the concept isn't unique enough, is that it's told entirely in verse. So... I'm not great with poetry. I'm not great at reading it. I'm not great at writing it. God knows I have tried in both respects, and I'm just not. But the one thing that I absolutely love and absolutely connect with wholeheartedly is slam poetry. I love performance poetry. I love to watch somebody stand up and tell me their poem. So I highly recommend listening to this in the audiobook. It is narrated or performed by the author. So there is that. It definitely has that going for it. And it's just beautiful. It's obviously kind of a haunting story. It's very heavy. Ultimately, the interpretation that I take away is that this kid gets on the elevator and begins arguing with himself. I think the significance of the visitors in the elevator, I mean, to me, they represent his own conscience. This book is more a piece of art than anything that I've read lately, if ever. Yes, I think books and writing is an artistic expression, but when it comes to being works of art, the majority of the books that I read, I don't necessarily consider works of art. However, Long Way Down, that it's very much what I consider it. I consider it to be a work of art. You know, the audiobook comes with an interview with the author after his performance. I'm going to call it a performance, in which he said, you know, that the format of the book is meant very much to convey what's happening in the book. The quick, short, compact language, and even the way that it's formatted on the page of the physical book. I think it's just, it's a work of art. So I'm comfortable saying to you, oh, this is a 3-star book or a 5-star book or a 1-star, whatever. I think that if it sounds like your deal, if it sounds like something that you could benefit from, then you should definitely read it. I benefited from it. it's a story that I can't necessarily personally connect to, but it's one that I'm still really in awe of and really impressed by. And so I do think that this book needs attention. So there you have it. Those are the other books that I read in the month of May. Which ended up being a really good reading month for me simply because my lovely wife, hello. If you want to hear me talk about that book, head on over to that video and listen to me gush like a fangirl. Anyways, if you've read any of the books that I mentioned, please leave your thoughts and your opinions down in the comment section below. If you have any questions about something that I failed to cover for you, leave that for me as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon.